Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Cash That. This is your host, Joe Dellera, and this episode is once again brought to you by our good friends at Rhythm. Rhythm is the number one AI betting tool that you need to have in your pocket, whether it's on your phone or honestly, if you're a desktop guy, you can get it on your computer as well, and you can get it for 25% off your first month or for a week free with the links down here in the bio. But the key here is that not only do they have the hit rate charts over the last 5, 10, whatever many games, right? They have back-end algorithms. And what that's doing is it's spitting out projections for you. And it's basing that projection based off the market. And it's determining whether or not there is or isn't an edge that's actionable for you. So you don't even have to do all the legwork. You can say, these are the things that I like. These are some of the angles that I'm looking at. And then it back tests you. And you can track your ability and your bets all through the app. And like I said, get it for 25% off your first month with the code in the bio down here. Additionally, I know NFL is starting to wind down, but look, that's the perfect time to start betting NBA. And the NBA is going to start getting more attention. We're going to start getting a little bit more nationally televised games. And the best thing that you can do is beat those bumps, especially as you see. We give out plays on the podcast, we give out plays online, whatever. The lines jump pretty fast. And one of the ways you can beat that is by joining the huddle. And you can get a couple days for free on me, and you get my plays first. You get my write-ups first. You get my analysis first. You get some of those special exclusive lottos or some of the exclusive parlays, some of those extra angles that you aren't necessarily getting. And honestly, I'm getting to be a busy guy with the kid. So this is the best way to get a hold of me on a daily basis if you have some questions, things that you want to talk to, or like ideas or angles that you want to kick around. So it's great. You get myself, you obviously get Matty Chucks, Lord Penguin, and That Guy Bets as well, all for one price. And you can get that, like I said, a couple days free on me in the bio, and then sign up because I think you're going to like it. I think you're going to enjoy. But now let's get into the Wednesday NBA slate. There are, right now, it's pretty late, admittedly, and we don't have a ton of information on some of these games, so I'm shooting for a little bit from the hip. We're going to work with some projections, just a couple angles that, maybe I'm looking at right now. But obviously, we have to talk about my favorite team, the New York Knicks. And they're playing the Philadelphia 76ers. And the spread is kind of bounced around a little bit. It's unclear who exactly is or isn't going to play. So Philadelphia, their bench is on a back-to-back. Because they basically sat all of their main players on Tuesday in the loss to Oklahoma City. They sat Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, Caleb Martin, Andre Drummond, and Kyle Lowry on Tuesday night. So it seemed like Paul George and Maxey were going to play on Tuesday, and they got ruled out later in the day. So I would imagine that they're able to go. For the Knicks, Brunson, he's listed on the injury report. His shoulder still, a reason to have him listed. He's listed as probable. Karl Anthony Towns, I don't know if you guys saw, but he's listed on his thumb is injured. And he's listed as questionable. When they were playing the Pistons, he went up for a dunk and his thumb got jammed against the backboard. And then they had it taped up, not splinted. They maybe should have gotten some x-rays. I don't know. He just kept saying it is what it is. So I'm not 100% sure what that means, but we'll kind of have to see. Not only is he going to play, but is he going to be limited as well? So obviously have to keep an eye out on that. One of the big things here for the Philadelphia 76ers is that they have not had a ton of time playing together as a unit. And it's really difficult to say just how good or bad they are. And Maxey, Paul George, and Joel Embiid have only played 404 possessions together this season. That is 11% of their total non-garbage time possessions, according to Cleaning the Glass. They're pretty good, plus 5.4 point differential in those minutes, in those possessions. But they're only scoring 108 points per 100, and the defense has actually been what's good, which is a little surprising. It's really tough to make heads or tails of what this Philadelphia 76ers team is going to look like, if they're going to be good, what the situation really is, and it makes it definitely more difficult to handicap the game. Now, I do think that there are some player props in this particular spot that I want to target, one of which is Jalen Brunson. I like his points line. It's at 25.5. He's played 11 games against Philly over the last 2 seasons, and he's averaging 29.1 points and 8.2 assists. So some of that has to do with those scoring spikes in the playoffs where he just was putting the team on his back. And The other thing is if Cat's thumb isn't 100%, I think that we could see Brunson needing to carry a little bit more of the scoring load. For Philadelphia, I'm looking at Paul George. His threes prop has been awesome. He's hit over 2.5 threes in 6 straight games. And if we look at what New York's able to do, he made 7 against New York earlier in the season. New York does tend to give up some of these looks from three-point range, and I like him to go over 2.5 threes. It's like minus 130 or so right about now. And in my game guide for the Action Network, one of the parlays that I'm putting together is Brunson 30 points, Paul George fees, plus 660 if you want to sprinkle something with a little bit longer odds. For the next game that I'm looking at the Celtics against the Raptors. Celtics are obviously heavy favorites. And one of the looks that I've been wanting to do, and I feel like I got boned the other day, was I liked Scotty Barnes under 5.5 assists. We've seen his assist percentage drop precipitously when he's playing alongside Immanuel Quickley. Problem is, Immanuel Quickley got ruled out out of the blue last game. Morning downgrade, those are the worst. And then he's going to be out again today. So definitely going to table that, but it's something that I'm looking for in the future the next time Immanuel Quickley plays. Got to make sure he's not on limits, a minutes restriction, something like that. But if they continue to give us this 5.5, it's still, I think, a good play to go on the under, but it's not something that I'm jumping for right now. His assist rate definitely does spike without Quickley, so something to consider. The one thing that I am looking for in this game, though, is that the Raptors continue to allow a ton of corner threes. Boston, obviously Hauser is the guy to look for. This season against the Raptors, 4 for 7 and 3 for 10 from 3. So I'm definitely going to be looking at Hauser. I'm probably going to be grabbing 1.5 threes and 3+ threes, maybe even a little bit of 4. Just depends on the number and depends on when this becomes available. But that's definitely something that I'm going to be looking for. And then Derek White is also good. He's been in a little bit of a shooting slump right now. He came back from the illness that he was dealing with. I think I'm probably dealing with it too. I keep getting this cough. It's been brutal. But anyway, not the point. His points prop is at 12.5 points. He has hit that in 76% of games this season. I know he's missed it in 3 in a row, but this is just a great matchup. It's a pace-up spot. The Raptors are just an absolute sieve defensively. They're highly susceptible to the 3 ball, and I just think that Derek White can get back on track here. So 12.5 points is just far too low for a guy averaging about 16 points a game. So I'm going to be looking at Derek White. The Bucks are obviously playing on a back-to-back. They just beat the Sacramento Kings, and they get a matchup against the Orlando Magic. The Magic have been through the absolute ringer in terms of their health. But Paolo Banchero is back. They have still managed to tread water, and they're playing pretty well over the course of the entire season. I don't have a super big lean on the game in and of itself, but I will say that Giannis has absolutely kicked ass against Orlando. 35, 37, 37, and 41 points over the last couple seasons against them. So have to see where this points prop winds up being. He just had the triple-double tonight or last night, and we just got to see where the points prop comes in. Maybe he decides, I don't need to pass the ball today. I get to score against the Orlando Magic. So that's definitely something that I'd be looking for there. For Denver versus Houston, Denver's on a back-to-back. Aaron Gordon, he said they expect him to be on a minutes limit for the foreseeable future. I'm not really sure what that means, but I wonder if he even plays. If he doesn't play, I think you have to look at, obviously Westbrook to a degree, but I think you have to look at Christian Brown, over 9.5 points, if that's where it's at. Again, I think it might even be 10.5, 11.5. I've been hitting that consistently without Aaron Gordon. So definitely looking there. And then I thought it was odd, actually, when I was looking up how Jokic has done against Şengün and trying to see some of the head-to-head stuff. They actually haven't played since 2023, which seems so long ago now, right? It's 2025. But basically all of their games last season were before in November and December. So it hasn't been since 2023. But anyway, 4 games, Jokic was averaging 32.3 points and 16.5 rebounds. So guy was just going absolutely crazy. And that's definitely something that I'm going to be looking for. He does tend to step up in some of these back-to-back spots. He rebounds better when Aaron Gordon's off the floor. So we know he's either going to be on a minutes limit or maybe he doesn't even play because of the back-to-back. Those are some of the spots that I'm going to be looking at in this Denver versus Houston game. I'm going to be looking at Christian Brown, and Nikola Jokic. I also think that Jalen Green has just been like incredible, honestly. He's been really good since kind of like Christmas, November-ish area. So definitely something to keep an eye out for. He has been tremendous. And when we look at Denver, they kind of struggle a little bit with, again, some of these lead guards. And I feel like Fred VanVleet has had success against Denver, both in terms of his scoring, and Jalen Green. They haven't played, obviously, since last year, but even then, Jalen Green played very well. 25, 26, 25 points over the last couple of games against Denver. So definitely something to look at. Jalen Green's at 23.5 points here. He's now hit this in 5 in a row. He's averaging 31.6 points per game over that stretch. He's had a really, really, really efficient game against Memphis. So I do think that he probably comes off of that a little bit. But at the same time, 23.5 just seems low based on how well he's been doing over his last 5 games or so. So definitely something to keep in mind there. The Hawks are facing off against the Bulls, and Zach LaVine's been playing out of his mind. So his points prop is definitely something you have to kind of look at. It's at 26.5. He had 37 last time he went out against Atlanta. Aside from this last game where he had 25, he'd been money on this. He'd been scoring 30 plus in 6 straight games, really since the start of the new year. So definitely something to keep an eye on there. Trae Young, I'd be looking at for his assist prop, 11.5. He's come down off of a 20 assist game the other day. He's had 7 and 5 in his last 2, but they were both against Phoenix, same type of matchup, whatever. Against Chicago, he's been money. 13, 13, 16 in his last 3 games against Chicago. So definitely something that I'd be looking for is Trae Young over 11.5 assists in this game for Atlanta versus Chicago. And I don't have any bets in this game right now, but for Dallas versus the Pelicans, I would be surprised if Zion plays. I think given the fact that it's a back-to-back for them, but Kyrie Irving did say that he expects to play, so that probably helps lean things a little bit more towards the Dallas Mavericks side. Just something to keep in mind and look out for when you're looking for props. Looking at the next game, the Warriors versus the Wolves. Gobert rebounds over 10.5. Randall rebounds over 6.5. They've both been absolute printers for this matchup against the Golden State Warriors. Only Curry has scored really well in this matchup, given how Minnesota really kind of needs to play in a drop. Their rotations are not that crisp. Conley's a little bit slower now. I think Curry over 25.5 points looks good in this game. It's a game that the Warriors kind of need to have. It's a game that Curry has. There's been some turmoil almost in the Warriors locker room with some of the players kind of saying, you need to sell out. We need to try to win here. And then, some of the Kerr and I think some of the management, they're kind of saying, well, we don't want to mortgage the future for a win now move when we don't even know if that's necessarily going to be it. But at the same time, you have Curry, who still has his ceiling. So you have to see exactly where this is going. I would imagine that Curry's going to come out, try to ball. This is a pretty big test against this Minnesota Timberwolves team as well, who has played pretty well over the course of the season. So definitely something to keep an eye out on. Looking at the Lakers versus the Heat, always LeBron versus Miami. You always have to wonder, is he going to get up for the points? Is he going to turn the ball over? What exactly is the angle going to be? I will say that from a turnover perspective, he has turned the ball over. The one game back in Miami on December 4th, 5 turnovers. He still put up 29 points, 5 boards, 8 assists, though. So definitely something to keep an eye on with LeBron. He always does seem to kind of get up for some of these games against his former teams. So points line's at 22.5. I don't mind it. I don't need it, but it's definitely something that you could consider for sure in this matchup. Finally, I'm looking at this Brooklyn versus Clippers game. Ivica Zubac, I like the 15.5 points that's out there. We know that Nick Claxton, he missed on Tuesday. I think that he's going to play on Wednesday. Ben Simmons, they said he's not going to play, which obviously hurts some of their defensive versatility. I think that this has just been a good spot for Zubac. He has a 75% hit rate in wins by 10 or more. The Clippers are significant favorites over the Nets. I think this is just a great spot for him again. 15.5 for Zubac in a matchup against a Brooklyn team that has been fairly susceptible to the center position and in allowing points in the paint to the center position. So I'm definitely going to be looking at him for this spot. in the Clippers versus the Nets game on Wednesday night. So as you guys can kind of hear, my voice is just completely shot. This was a little bit of a struggle to get through. I do want to have some more extended thoughts on some of the awards markets and some conversation about that. I do think that at this point, some of the awards, they've kind of swung in a way where I think that there's now value, or it's kind of creating new value in the market where there wasn't value before. Like Cade Cunningham being the favorite for most improved player. I think that Cade makes sense. I think he checks a lot of the boxes, but I also think that there is going to be some opportunity over the next couple of days, weeks, to try to buy in or restructure our portfolio if you want to fade Cade a little bit. I also think that, like I kind of touched on in the last episode, with some of these awards markets, they swing dramatically, and they're not always like tied to reality. So I think that Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart had an interesting conversation on the Roommate Show, and they were talking about how does the conversation like around MVP, like how is it different at different points in time, right? So they said like Denver's not seeded like the way they were last year, and people are still talking about Jokic being the MVP. And I'm quoting, but when Luka was averaging damn near a triple-double, they were like, oh, he shouldn't win MVP because of his seeding. And I think it's interesting that was kind of the conversation that these guys are having. And it was the other thing that I thought was interesting was the way that they were like, yeah, like, and Shea, well, like, you know, his numbers are getting there now, blah, 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 and like the team's great. I thought it was just an interesting perspective to hear it from them. And I also think that it shows you that when you have this type of groupthink from the media or different agendas are being pushed, these markets can really swing dramatically. So you want to try to structure your betting. It's like you don't want to necessarily be in the moment. Like sometimes, especially at the end of the season, it's like, no, I need to hammer this right now because this is the way the narrative is going. This is the way I need to bet it. We're still really early in the season. So there's going to be these puff pieces. There's going to be these conversations around, you know, certain players. Whether, like, let's say it's Alex Sarr for the Washington Wizards. He's now leading in scoring of all rookies for Rookie of the Year. It's like 11.5 points a game. And he moved to be the favorite for Rookie of the Year. I think that Sarr makes a little bit of sense given the draft position, the pedigree, whatever, some of the defensive stats as well. But there's just these huge swings. And now Cade has been playing really well. Detroit, the conversation is like, oh, they're so much better than they were exactly a year ago. Is this going to look exactly the same if they have a bad stretch? If they miss the playoffs, are people going to be like, oh yeah, no, Cade most improved? Or are they going to say, yeah, like he's better, but he was the number one pick. There's going to be somebody else. So I think that we have to try to not get caught in the moment. And when you're using and betting some of these plays, like the way I like to do, where I say, you know, use your free bets, create a portfolio, use it to build a position. So that way later in the season, when you do have a little bit more certainty, you have either more artillery to then go and try to hedge, or you have more ability because you have more positions where you didn't really risk anything because you use some free bets, and you're able to then either hedge out of it or really be aggressive on another side of the bet or another candidate. So all that being said is try to not be a slave to the moment. And even like with some of our player props, when we're saying this is a good buy low opportunity because the prop dropped down, or the juice has changed a little bit, and because they had a couple bad games, or if they had a couple good games and you're looking to sell high, that's the way that this goes. A lot of it has to do with the way that we think, and a lot of it has to do with the way that we perceive things to be happening. And a lot of the times when we see the market move, we almost use it as a false indicator, right? That our thought process is right, or that is right. So the market is generally going to be fairly efficient, right? But there are going to be some times where it's not, and it's reacting in a way because it's trying to limit exposure. We talk about this with closing line value, especially with player props. And I think a lot of the value that we have and, like that you get is, like we put out our plays publicly, and a lot of times that is going to move the line. There are times where I bet things and the line moves and it's before anybody else could even get down. It just moves because I bet on it. And, we have to be a little bit more creative with that then, right? So with player props and stuff, a lot of it has to do with the fact that the books are comfortable setting a line at a certain spot. And when they put out these openers, they know this goes with spreads as well, but player props in particular, because they're harder to cap, right? And there's so many more of them, they're less efficient for the book. They put these lines out, and when they get hammered and then they move because they go, well, we obviously got something wrong. We're going to move it. We don't need this liability here. We're going to change it a little bit. And, it's impactful for you guys if you're trying to tail me. And that's part of why, we have the huddle now, or why I joined the huddle. So if you are somebody that wants the exact same lines that I'm getting, you can get that earlier than it gets released to the general public. So all that be like, we can create line moves. And like you saw those guys getting it, like there's like these people getting grilled about it the other day. I'm not even going to say their names on here, honestly, but basically you had these two people and they were like betting opposite sides of things. And they were like, one person was touting it, and then the other guy, they were working together, would wait for the lines to move and then would go bet the other sides. They were almost like arbing the situation, right? It's fucked up, and it's market manipulation, and you are really like misleading anybody that's following you, paying you, whatever. But when lines move like that, you can't take the line moving as you, like me being on the right side of it necessarily. Sometimes yes, other times it's about the fact that they don't want liability on that particular spot anymore. Like they don't want the exposure on that particular number. So that's a lot of times why the line moves. At the same time, that doesn't mean that you're not getting immense value from getting the line early from where I'm putting it out, because I have it modeled in a particular way saying there's value here, but there might not be value if it bumps 50 cents, if it bumps a number, if it bumps a stat, whatever. So there is value, just as like you don't need to say, well, I get closing line value on every play, because in theory, if you're trying to fly under the radar, you don't want closing line value. You want to find ways to beat the lines without that, because it's one way to keep your account a little bit safer and a little bit more secure. So we'll touch on this a little bit more in the future. I know that there's some people that are really good at this conversation, really good at this topic. I'd like to get them on the podcast and kind of flesh this out a little bit more fully. But that is the absolute extent that my voice has right now. So I'm going to recommend cough drops because I need one and I need it right now. And I did like a telehealth visit. Unbelievable. That shit is so fast. I've never done one before for like the emergent care or whatever. Unbelievable. I like set it up. Next thing you know, I get a text and they're like, your doctor's ready. The appointment was 5 minutes and I got my medicine. It's fantastic. So highly recommend that. And, while doctors might not be automated yet, our betting definitely can be. And like I said, this podcast is brought to you by our good friends at Rhythm. And you can get 25% off your first month and get a free week trial first. Test it out, see if you like it, all on me with the link in the bio. And use that, take your cough drops, get your medicine, use this podcast to keep cashing, and let's continue to cash that.